Hello and welcome viewers, I am Pia and you're watching NewsX World. We've just seen an hour-long press conference by Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson for Kremlin, conclude. There was a lot that was spoken about with regards to Russian President Vladimir Putin's upcoming visit to India. Remember, it's a two-day state visit that is going to be held on the 4th and the 5th of December. And of course, high on the agenda is not just taking forward the historic friendship that India and Russia enjoy, but a lot as far as the defense deals are concerned, cooperation in the nuclear sector, economic cooperation, enhancing the trade targets by 2030 to 100 billion as well. Currently, the trade is at 68 billion. And of course, this all comes as India is currently under US sanctions for buying Russian oil. Remember, India is the second largest importer of Russian oil. Some major statements have been made over here with regards to sanctions. Mr. Peskov did say that this is a matter between India and the United States of America, but he's also stated that at the same time sanctions against Russian oil companies, Lukoil and Rosneft, they are illegal. Apart from this, he's also appreciated India's position as far as Russia's war against Ukraine is concerned. The fact that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has time and again, also conveyed this to Vladimir Putin face to face, that this is not an era of war. There is a meeting slated to take place very, very shortly in Moscow between Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner and Vladimir Putin. What comes out of that remains to be seen. But high on the agenda, as I was mentioning, defense deals, S-400, Su-57, a lot of murmur regarding all of that. Joining me now are two very special guests. I have with me Major General Sudhakar Ji, Senior Geopolitical and Strategic Defense Expert, joining us from New Delhi. Also with me is Mr. Gilbert Dr. Rao. He's a Russian affairs expert, joining us from Brussels. I'd like to break down the 1 hour conversation that Mr. Peskov has had with our reporters in India into little parts. I'd like to begin with Major General Sudhakar Ji. Interestingly, what came up is the share of Russian arms in India. Mr. Peskov pointed out that the share is currently at 36%. There are also murmurs that the S-400s are on agenda. We do have three. Two more are slated to come in very, very shortly, which we're most likely going to deploy on the eastern edge. Su-57, something that has again come up. He's described it as the best fighter jet in the world. He's spoken about competitors, not really naming any, but he's just stated that it's important to stick to international law while vying for deals, and this is something that Russia is ensuring, that the competition is just. What do you make of all of this? What major deals do you think can come out of this state visit?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for getting me for your show. In one line, if I may be allowed to say, that our stand with regard to Russia has got reinforced with deeper conviction and substance. And when I say this, what I mean is that our strategic partnership in politics, in defense, in civil nuclear energy, in anti-terrorism cooperation, and advancement of and exploration of outer space, they have further taken us to new domains of cooperation. Joint development, joint research, and joint introduction of weapon systems will not be restricted to BrahMos alone. As we are talking, we are mindful of the fact that there is a BrahMos hypersonic missile which is under trial. Yes. Maybe by this month itself, this missile is going to be deployed successfully and effectively. And that has come about in such a short time because of close cooperation between India and Russia. So having said this, you have touched upon a couple of issues. Let me very briefly reflect on each of them. One point which actually needs a mention by NewsX World, I personally feel as a student of geopolitics, is that the Arctic is melting. And this melting of the Arctic is opening up a new domain, a new perspective of the global order. And India to be a member in the melting stage of this Arctic for the purpose of exploration, for the purpose of the joint ventures, and operating along with they have a consulate. There are 8 member countries in the world which are actually forming a group. Russia happens to be the central point, pillar of that particular group. India would do well if we can invest time, energy, and our focus to be a member. As of now, we are observer status. Next point I have a quick reflection is about the civil nuclear energy. As far as the civil nuclear energy is concerned, India is in dire need of the modular nuclear reactor, which Russia has actually got developed expertise.
Absolutely.
And we want to go in for that climate change, zero emission capability by the stipulated timeline of 2070 or before that. And we are ahead of the target which is set in India itself, renewable energy levels. By 2030, we have our own target. It's more than 500 gigawatts. And therefore, this modular nuclear reactor is going to be an on thing and happening thing, actually, if it can pick up momentum in India. Next is about the terrorism. I'm glad and very proud that Russia and India both are singing the same point of concern in
Absolutely.
unison, which is going to be heard, I presume, by people across the Atlantic with the same depth and magnitude. Let me forewarn my friends across Atlantic that don't wait for another 9/11 to happen. It's about time that we define the term what is terrorist and what is terrorism. There is a counter strategy proposed by India in 1996 in the United Nations Security Council. We need to apply ourselves, get people around or the countries around and formulate a counter strategy to put this menace in place. Otherwise, the whole world is going to experience a huge turbulence in times ahead.
Indeed,
Next,
sir.
I have in the
Indeed, sir. Requesting you to hold on to that thought because I'll come to the points that Mr. Peskov raised regarding terrorism. I'd like to rope in Mr. Dr. Rao into the conversation. He's, of course, been listening rather peacefully. Something that Major General Sudhakarji also raised over here is the fact of small nuclear modular reactors. Mr. Peskov, in fact, informed that the chief of Rosatom will be accompanying President Vladimir Putin to India. Interestingly, this follows Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Rosatom headquarters last year itself when he had taken the trip to Russia. In your assessment, where do you think, if a deal is inked, this could transform India's nuclear sector? Because we've seen cooperation as far as the Kundankulam nuclear plant is concerned.
Well, I think this is a very prospective area for cooperation between Russia and India. After all, the Russian Rosatom is the single company in the world with the largest order book and projects underway in building nuclear plants for peaceful purposes, for electricity generation. So it's the right partner for India, and it is in perfect line with the continuity of India having extensive cooperation in many domains, formerly with the Soviet Union and presently with the Russian Federation. At the same time, I have a slightly different take on the significance of the state visit that's about to take place. It is very inconvenient timing today. Of course, these meetings are scheduled months and if not years ahead of time, and it was unforeseeable that there would be such strong headwinds against the cooperation that we see today because of Mr. Trump's secondary tariffs. The increase in Indian-Russian trade that you noted at the outset and the 68 billion figure that you gave, all of that has been pumped up by Indian imports of petroleum to an exceptional level, which is out of line with the past sources of import of oil for India, which was primarily the Middle East. Accordingly, the impact of the Trump secondary sanctions has been devastating to this trade. And it has also calls into question, let's be honest about it, it calls into question the utility of BRICS as a economic binding force of the founding members. In the present circumstances, Russia and China are putting substantially greater emphasis not on BRICS, but on SHOS, as it is in Russian, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is more focused regionally on Eurasia, doesn't have countries in it who have different interests, like Brazil. And I assume that India will play a larger role in that cooperation agreement. But nonetheless, the notion of a multipolar world being built by these various cooperations in all kinds of domains, including nuclear energy, including the Arctic, is not what is bringing about multipolarity. Multipolarity is being brought about on the battlefield of Ukraine with Russian victory. And therefore, the support that India can give in the settlement, in bringing the international community to recognize the results of this peace that is now under discussion, that will be very important and will consolidate Russian-Indian relations. But presently, they're afraid because of Mr. Trump's secondary sanctions.
All right, sir, requesting you to stay on with us. I will take forward the point, especially regarding alternative currencies that you've brought up. But in the meantime, I'd like to rope in Major General Sudhakarji back into the discussion over here. Interestingly, you did mention about, the stance, the backing that Russia has given as far as, the Red Fort blast in India is concerned. That was quite a statement. They not just condemned the Red Fort terror attack, but also the source of this terrorism, highlighting that the only way to combat terrorism is international cooperation, and Russia will certainly be with India along the way. This response was in a question by NewsX World's editor-in-chief, Mr. Rishabh Gulati. What do you make of this strong statement? Of course, Russia has strongly backed India whenever we have faced challenges and difficulties, and a major indication that it will continue doing so.
Better let the neighbor. Russia, as a P5 member, my personal take on the issue is that it has got more weight and clout to call out such kind of terrorist activities more often and more frequently, more louder in United Nations Security Council. And regardless whether it is heard or not, mobilizing the world opinion is very, very important. We all need to look at terrorism and the terrorist in one sense through one prism, because we can, in 21st century, apply the interpretation somebody's freedom fighter is someone else's terrorist and vice versa. That no longer. As long as I personally feel terrorism has to have one common definition wherever any mankind's life and safety is being intimidated, or there is a threat to the safety of human life, and the usage of the firearms is likely, or any explosives which is likely, may have ideology, may not have ideology. Regardless of all this, they must have a common, or it's about time, in case I am not able to express myself well, something on these lines have to be evolved and developed, and the whole world order has to come to one particular platform. As far as the statement which the Kremlin spokesperson has given, I think they need to be complimented. India can't thank Russia enough for a timely condemnation and standing by India in critical junctures where the threat is spreading all over after Operation Sindoor. The Bangladesh is popping up, and Nepal is, there are indications they may also go the Bangladesh way. Couple of months back, we have Maldives, they say India out campaign. So while the profile and the security imperatives in the immediate neighborhood are beyond, hardly anything desirable, I personally feel we need friends and country like Russia, which is evergreen, higher than Everest and deeper than the ocean as far as India is concerned. And therefore, we need to actually galvanize and mobilize the world of opinion with the same kind of momentum and take on like-minded countries along to evolve an effective counter strategy in the global order.
Indeed, one really interesting point of this was the fact that Mr. Peskov has stated that, Russia understands the pain of terrorism. We all remember the horrific terror attack that had taken place on the 22nd of March last year itself at the Crocus City Hall in Krasnogorsk in the Moscow Oblast last year itself, where 149 people had lost their lives. 4 terrorists associated with the Islamic State Khorasan province had carried out a mass shooting as well as slashing attacks against people who had gathered at the venue. They then used incendiary devices to set the venue on fire. So Russia knows this pain very well. This has been highlighted by Mr. Peskov as well. I'd like to rope in Mr. Dr. Rao back into the conversation over here. Another question that was posed by our editor-in-chief was the fact that we've seen the nature of trade change a little bit. The fact that, national currencies are being used. Something that Mr. Peskov pointed out is the fact that India and Russia are trading in the rupee and ruble. We're also seeing yuan being used for trade between Russia and China. He's noted that the share of American dollar is decreasing in global trade, this is taking place as of now. At the moment, yes, he stated that it's quite a humble tendency at the moment, but the tempo will continue. You've of course pointed out the fact that this is taking place more through the SCO mechanism than the BRICS mechanism, but we've seen Donald Trump not take very kindly to all of this. If the time does come, because US is also straddled with its own national debt that is about to touch 40 trillion, I beg your pardon, US dollars. If in a scenario where the dollar is devalued, how do you think the world, the markets would look like tomorrow?
Well, I don't expect any dramatic change in the markets or in the dollar's value or in the ability of the Americans in the near term, at least, to manipulate markets and to dominate markets. Mr. Trump has been doing that since he took office. I think the attack on India in the form of high tariffs and now secondary tariffs, sanctions linked to the oil trade with Russia, I think the bigger issue that is behind Mr. Trump's policy is to try to break BRICS. And for the reason you mentioned in passing, because it is a vehicle for moving away from the dollar by its various activities, and particularly by going over to national currencies in intra-BRICS trade. So this is in the sights of Mr. Trump, and I cannot say that he is ineffective. The United States is declining relative to global GDP and relative to its economic power in the world, but still is, when its wishes are implemented by a very determined and motivated actor like Mr. Trump, it still can create havoc for other players. So I wouldn't overdo the challenges that the dollar faces in the near term. In the long term, we're all dead. So let's talk about today.
Indeed. Coming back to the dollar itself, a quick follow-up to this. What do you make of the fact that, yes, the US is riddled with a lot of debt, nearly 40 trillion. There are analysts who are pointing out that in order to offset this, they may print more currency, leading to hyperinflation. We're already seeing, the side effects of the government shutdown that was on for more than a month and a half, in fact, which, as analysts pointed out, did lead to some slight recession as well.
Well, the American stock market remains at all-time highs, even though there are many observers who are saying that this is a bubble. Bubble it may be, there may be a crash coming, but at this moment, when you're asking me today, the American economy is not doing badly.
All right, so requesting you to stay on with us. We're shifting focus to further developments as far as, this particular press conference is concerned. One other thing that Mr. Peskov has highlighted is that in just a couple of hours, we're expecting Steve Witkoff, US's special envoy, and Jared Kushner to meet with Vladimir Putin. This is an interesting meeting because we've, of course, seen a lot of talks take place. There was a Ukrainian delegation in Florida over the weekend. There were talks between Dan Driscoll and the Russians in Abu Dhabi. There were talks between Marco Rubio and the Ukrainians in Geneva after, of course, the earlier 28 point draft had leaked to the press. It was, of course, the Associated Press that had published that. So in light of this, Major General Sudhakarji, I'd like to rope you into the conversation over here. What are your expectations from this particular meeting that is slated to take place very, very shortly? Could we see some major headway being made as far as the peace plan is concerned? We do know that there are certain amendments that the United States has had to factor in because the Europeans and Ukraine's European allies are quite vocal, claiming that the original draft was very sympathetic to the Russian cause.
Yeah, great question you have asked. And out of, I think, 28 points in the peace proposal, I'm given to understand, as per the open source platforms are concerned, they have been brought down to 19, I suppose. And all the frivolous and issues which are common in nature or understood to be accepted, they have been deleted. And these 19 points, if I may have to speak my heart out, well, it sounds very good to have a peace proposal for an ongoing conflict like Russia and Ukraine. Unless the peace proposal addresses the core issue, the concerns of both the sides, I don't think they will have a lasting peace, because this may give a very myopic, short-sighted joy and enjoyment, as the way the Middle East 20-point proposal has given, transaction or exchange of hostages and with the prisoners. This peace process is very, very extremely complex. It has to be understood from historical, from geographical, from linkages point of view, from language point of view, sequence of event, the chronology, the way it has come, how the Yellow Revolution compelled the leadership at Kiev to undergo change. So how the Maidan Revolution took place. Likewise, there have been an agreement in existence in 1994. That agreement doesn't hold any good or relevance today. Such like issues. So therefore, if you allow me, a couple of points I would like to make, if you have time. First and foremost thing is that are the core concerns of Russia being addressed? Because as Russia was the aggressor, we should not lose sight of the fact. Why was it aggressor? Why was it compelled to invade Ukraine? That has to be understood. Now, if that question has not been taken into cognizance, then I'm sorry, this peace proposal will fall flat. So from Russia's side, they had given out a couple of points that has been circulated. People's view has been taken. Multiple consultations with multiple stakeholders have taken place. It's progressing in a very progressive and positive manner. But the key core issue where it is likely to get stuck is ceding of land by Ukraine to Russia. Is that admissible in 21st century? Is that going to be legislated and ratified by the parliament? It's a parliamentary kind of a democracy they have. Presidential democracy. But they have a parliament. It has to be ratified. Ceding of land is not one man's judgment or decision. In any case, Zelensky does not have any legal and technical sanctity today. So therefore, that is the key issue. Whether this 20% of land which is under occupation by Russia, which Russia is demanding, plus Crimea, plus a couple of other places here and there, is it going to be tenable and acceptable by the Ukrainians? If yes, I don't think there is going to be any problem. This is the moot question on which Zelensky doesn't have any answer, nor the Europeans have any answer. They will keep crying hoarse that Russia is going to invade them with tanks on. Sorry, the threat in 21st century is totally different to Europe than it was in 20th century. This should be mindful of. Every European will do good if they understand and assess the threat in a realistic manner. Today, there is a demographic swap taking place in Europe. Wherever you go to France, go to Germany, go to UK, the indigenous population is non-existent. Virtually, they are being challenged. That is a bigger threat. Trump has his bag's full. He is not going to look beyond. Even if he's got the capability, he's not going to look beyond until unless the security and safety of his country and the adjoining areas are secure. That is what has to be understood. And when we talk about Putin, what he means, what is he doing? He is doing everything for the people of Russia, who are Russian-speaking people in that 20% piece of land. They have got about 30% of the population of Ukraine who are speaking in Russian language. There is an obligation in the constituency that has to be factored in. That earlier was existing, but that has been deleted after the Maidan Revolution and subsequent amendment to the constitution. So therefore, such like issues have to be deliberated, factored in, and they have to go about doing things, in my opinion, in the following manner. Firstly, they must divide the entire approach into a short-term, a medium-term, and a long-term perspective spectrum. In the short term, they will do good to identify certain themes and address them accordingly. Presently, the short-term objective should be freeze wherever one is, bring everything to a standstill, total ceasefire, no guns blazing, no guns will fire. Wherever one is, just stop there. One. Number two, in the short term, they will do good if both the parties or the stakeholders, they fall back by a couple of kilometers from the existing contact points by about, say, 2 kilometers or 5 kilometers. Number three, they identify an imaginary line joining important geographical features, call that by any name, line of control or international border or whatever, and let a neutral force come here to dominate and keep it under surveillance. Number four, the next point is that a kind of a United Nations force under the flag of United Nations has to come in here so that with a given mandate, so that the peace can be enforced if the keeping cannot be ensured. And last but not the least, the biggest challenge because of which this problem has taken place is the lack of existence of a security architecture between the East Europe and the Central Europe, joining the borders, joining like Poland, Belarus, and going out to Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, towards Finland side. This border, somebody has to be there, some mechanism has to exist, or some agreement must come in place wherein the NATO should be disallowed from further expansion and triggering such kind of offensive or conflicts in future or times ahead.
Absolutely. This is something that Mr. Peskov did highlight. They are worried about the fact that, NATO is right in their backyard itself. Major General Sudhakarji, of course, crucial points you've put forth there. Of course, Russia is also concerned about its frozen assets. It's called the fact that EU plans to use this in order to fund the war as practically stealing Russian money as well. Another key point was the fact that the potential for $100 billion trade by 2030 has also been raised by both sides. Of course, what comes of this? How will we expand the value from 68 billion today to 100 billion in just another 5 years remains to be seen. But I'd like to thank you, sir, for taking out time, of course, sharing your perspectives on all of these very, very crucial developments. I'd also like to thank Mr. Gilbert Doctora for taking out time, sharing his insights with us as well. Of course, both our guests have sat with us on a very, very short notice. Remember, the press conference went out for an hour and had concluded only at 3 p.m. On that note, viewers, we will continue to track all of these developments very, very closely. But due to paucity of time, it's a wrap on this particular bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.